Welcome to the Fire from Two Windows podcast, where we hope to take a deep dive into the fire service. Training, interviews with a broad spectrum of firefighters. Your host, Matt, and myself, Lou, are always looking to improve our trade. Tonight, a little special podcast. We're going to kicking around the topic the other day. How do we start off our shift? How do we, get to work? What do we do? We kind of hit on the first. I think it was the first one we talked about the air packs, or maybe it was the second one.
I think we briefed over it on the last one, at least.
Yeah, so that kind of spawned the idea. Let's do a quick little one about just start of the shift stuff. But first, just want to say that these are just my opinions, Matt opinions. They don't reflect any of our employers, paid or volunteer side, or any other part-time job we have. There are solely the opinions of ourselves. And yeah. So you have a long drive into work. I got a short drive into work. So we got kind of broad spectrum of how we're dealing with getting ourselves ready for our shift. And you can also hit on, maybe responding from home alarms, what you can do to get yourself mentally prepared for an alarm, when the volunteer pager goes off. I haven't been in that realm in we're 15, 16 years now. But like I said, my drive from my home to the firehouse is, I think, if I don't catch a train, it's less than 5 minutes.
Yeah, right now one of those tracks is disabled at the moment. They're doing some construction, so you got to go around. So add another 30 seconds.
Yeah. Going down the one side road adds about 30 seconds to the drive. But I will say, weekdays, when my shift is on a Monday through Friday, the gym right around the corner opens up at 5:30. So I really start my day on a weekday shift. I get up around 5 o'clock in the morning and get myself together and get to the gym for a quick 30-minute workout. I always find doing that kind of sets the tone for the day a little bit better than, on a weekend shift. I, relatively speaking, sleeping in till 6 o'clock. And then I get to the firehouse at 6:05, 6:10, depending on how fit, if I'm prepared. If I prepare myself the morning or the night before, then I'll have to get my gym bag and my backpack together. I just head out the door and get to work. But I find getting a workout in before the shift starts sets a tone pretty good for the day. Reluctantly, I don't do that on the weekends when I have a weekend shift, just because I don't have the discipline to get in the gym at 7 in the morning, because there's other stuff going on at the firehouse, and there's me being an officer. There's I like to get a lot of my officer computer work done before the firemen arrive, so I usually get in pretty early. But what are your takes on even before work? What are you doing before work?
So like you said, I have an hour drive, roughly around an hour drive. The earlier I get up and get moving, the smaller that time window is. The later I delay, the longer that drive gets, just because traffic starts waking up and I got to compete with all the other commuters out there. So kind of to start off with what you were saying there, we work 24-hour shifts. That's our base shift, 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. Being about an hour away, I like to be here an hour before work. That's just I've done that for every one of my jobs. So if I can get in at 6, I'm awesome. 6:30 is my latest. So that's kind of how it starts off. I get up between 4:30, 5 at the latest if I'm running behind. But 4:30 is kind of my sweet spot. I pack all my stuff up the night before, bags by the door or already in the truck. Get going. And I get here between 5:30 and 6 a.m. If it's pushes past there, I'm kind of in the danger zone, but I'm still early. The reason for that hour to 1.5 hour before shift is so that I can get all of my equipment on the rig, get the coffee going, just kind of have my morning routine, because at 7:01 when that alarm comes in, we're ready to rock and roll. And we've had that. How many times have we had that? I mean, even if it was 2 minutes before 7 o'clock.
Right, and
I like to be prepared for that.
if you don't have your stuff on the rig, luckily where the officers keep their gear at our firehouse. It's, real close to the rig, so it's not an issue for the officers. But some of the firemen have their gear. They got to do the maze, the rat maze across the truck bay through, the spare engine, the boat, and whatever else is, in the truck bays at that time to get their gear. But something you brought up, I've always done it. I think it was you caught the tail end of the generation of relief time.
I think that's where
Uh,
it really solidified, at least in this profession.
Yeah, we used to work 10s and 14s, and it was an unwritten gentleman's rule. You get in an hour before your shift starts. So if, our shift the day shift always started at 7. So guys were always, coming in around 6:15, like you said, getting the coffee going, um, generally checking the rig. Some guys don't like to have their gear off the rig. Who those ones are. I don't mind if you pull my gear off the rig. It's not gonna bother me. But what I've noticed, and it started before we were on the 10. It started before we went to the 10s and 14s. That relief time, especially for the day shift, started creeping. It started creeping. It went from 6. Guys were coming in at 6:15. Then it was 6:30. Now you see guys rolling in at 6:45, 6:50. And, then you have the couple stragglers that are, rolling in right at 6:59. It's like, you're not late, but you're not on time, So to me, is if you're getting in at 6:50 and if your gear's on the rig at 7 o'clock, there's really nothing I can do about it as an officer, but it is what it is. It's not, I don't like it. They, even guys on my shift, they'll get here at 6:50, but they're still ready to go at 7. It's just not something I was ever taught to do. And I think with the 24 hours, when we switch to 24 hours now, I think it's almost across the board. The majority of the guys here that work here, the relief time is pretty much close to the shift start time.
Yeah.
And I don't know
It's
how it
also
started.
generation. We've had so many different new hires now. We've had some guys retire. We talked the last podcast. Some guys have retired, but we've also expanded, as a lot of departments around us have, just because of rules, regulations, whatever. We got to expand, to keep the public safe. So we're hiring a lot of people, and a lot of those people are younger. Not a problem. It's just that now we've gotten to we throw that term around, young department. We've got a lot of people with even 3 years or less on the job, and that's the majority. Handful around that 10-year mark, plus minus 2. And then just a few left that are above that, at least at the fireman level. The officers obviously have many years of experience and everything. And they can definitely set that tone, but the new people, we're just not we're not pushing them to really hold that tradition that you and I think, or definitely you, like you said, I caught the tail end of it, kind of hold it as a value. My big thing is, I know there's a lot of guys here, older guys. It was just a respect. They got kids. They got to get the kids on the bus at 7 o'clock or just after 7. So it's nice to, hey, I don't have kids yet, nothing like that. So I'm going to get on, I'm going to get their stuff off the rig. Maybe I tuck it away for them, but I'm definitely going to have my stuff set up and ready to go between 6 and 6:30, so that if they were up and they really got to get out the door, they can. There's no problem. Our department doesn't mind that, so long as there's a butt in the seat. And they
Right.
understand that. Obviously, over the time, you're going to work that out with the oncoming officer, the offgoing officer, to make sure that's cool as well. But really, it's a respect thing for the guys coming off shift, so they can go home, see their kids. Maybe their wives or their spouses are coming and going. They're ships in the night type of deal. So one person's coming off and then one person's going straight back to work. And the only time they get to see them is that 5-minute, window of opportunity for a couple days in a row. And then maybe a weekend they get to glance at each other a little bit longer than 5 minutes.
No, I will say though, our probies, do a good job of getting in early.
Yeah, it's not
I
a
make
bad
it.
thing. It's just something
No, I make it.
we can
I
feel
make it
is
a game
palpable.
for my probies. One of my probies that I had earlier in the year, he always tried to beat me into work, so then it became a game for me.
Oh yeah, he's not going
I
to win.
cut my work out. Yeah, I would cut my workout a little short just to prove a point that I'm still going to get here before you. And I noticed, like, working on your group, like the guys that work at the bigger firehouse, they they seem to get in early, and it's kind of cool to watch. But at the same time, it's a nightclub in that firehouse at 6 in the morning. It's like, guys, I didn't even have a cup of coffee yet, and you have the JBL, full blast, playing who knows what kind of music going on. It's like, let me get a cup of coffee in first. Let me, catch my bearings a little bit, and then we can get into the day. But so, all right, so you got your drive. You can, mentally prepare in that hour drive.
I can wake
I go
up.
to the gym. Yeah, you can wake up. I get to the gym, light workout, nothing really heavy, 30 minutes. It's usually kind of like it's not a hit workout. It's more, light weights, high reps. Uh, I think today I did maybe 35 sets. It was my cleans workout that, but it was kind of toned down, just different variations of power cleans. But, so I get to work, coffee goes on, yeah, I'm the officer. If the pro gets here, he's usually about getting the coffee on. Or if the group ahead of me's had an early run, or if they got a probie on, they get up pretty early and get the coffee on, which is good. Then, all right, so we get to the rig, get your gear on, get your gear set up. Depending on the officer, sometimes we have a riding board. I hope every department has a riding assignment board, because one of the nice things about having the riding assignment board, I'm a father of 3. I don't get to sleep in that often. I try to let my wife sleep in as much as possible when I am home. So on the weekends, a Friday 24 into a Saturday. Saturdays are my day to sleep in, or a Saturday 24 into a Sunday. If we have nothing going on the weekend, I'm sleeping in. I leave a note on the board. The captain's sleeping in today, and the officers are good about, all right, Cap's sleeping in. We'll take his gear off the rig for him and get set up. Usually, when I get to work and I'm relieving your group, or if I'm relieving another group, depending on who's working, I'll take the gear off their rig and get their gear off the rig and put it back in their locker as best I can and get my gear set up for the day. I notice that happens when, my group comes in and relieves you. I don't really think they put your gear away in the locker, but they stack it neatly on the floor for you at least.
Yeah, I always have the same handful of guys. It seems like I'm always being relieved or relieving the same 3-4 people, and it's just how the rotations play out. Most groups kind of rotate through positions. For those listening, the 2 back seats and then the driver. Some groups you just have a kind of a constant driver, and the 2 backseat positions flip flop. For us, that's the, because we're on a truck, it's going to be the hook and a can position, and then the other one is the OV position. And then that also depends on, if you're first due, how far away that engine is. You might be nozzle and tools type of thing, or nozzle and backup. But regardless, yeah, it depends on what their rotation is. But it always seems like it's the same handful of guys that rotate through here. So we kind of have this, we've developed this nice little rhythm that if I come in, I take their gear off. I try to find their locker if they're from the station, and I just tuck it away nice and neat for them. A lot of guys have done that for me. I try to get up anyways. I don't really sleep in unless we've had like a going straight up until 5 a.m. type of night. I might need an extra hour. But if I'm working, if I'm rolling right into another shift, that's a whole separate thing. You got to be up and ready to roll. But yeah, I'm not afraid to take people's stuff off the rig. Yeah, the first time that they say something and say, "Hey, I really want to go right up until 7." Oh, okay, then I will respect that. We haven't had that yet. There's one guy that actually, he was a recent retiree. He used to be one of your guys. Day 1 when I first started here, don't touch my stuff. He swore, but don't touch my stuff. Okay, so I would just throw it in the back anyways and be next to him. I would not touch his stuff. Let him handle it, and that was his thing. He was messing with me, but. Learned a lot from him, but that was his deal. A little respect thing. You learn.
I don't think he cared if you took that 6:50 in the morning run from him.
No.
But all right, so you as a backseat fireman, we'll stick with you in the back seat now if we can hit on the driver stuff too or the chauffeur stuff. But as a backseat fireman, I'm guessing 90% of the country, you can see how people lay out their gear. We got the grab handles on the side that are a decent height. I'm guessing you hang your coat up on the grab handles.
Yes, I do. Except for in the wintertime, we have those hooks that are kind of right. It's just inside on the back wall.
Oh yeah, the backseaters put the hooks on the doors, didn't they?
Yeah, ours is it's like
Inside,
right
yeah.
across from our seat. And just because the slush and all the road grime.
And do you use a radio strap?
I do.
Yeah, radio strap on it. So coat over the grab handle, radio strap over the coat. So radio strap goes on first under the coat. Coat comes on, right? How do you set up your hood with your bunker pants?
Both my prior volunteer service and up until about a year ago, I did. I laid it right across the top. And then, as we all know, with the cancer stuff that's been more and more prevalent, I've gotten used to laying it with it when you open up the back door. I lay it right there. It's
On the
on the
floorboard.
floorboard. Yeah, so I can't miss it, and it's still part of the process. I have to throw that on before grabbing my radio purse and then my jacket, but I don't want that right in the crotch of my pants all the time.
Yeah, it's probably a habit I probably should break.
It is, and that's what I've been trying to do. It's just discipline. I'm working on it. I don't always follow it, but I've been trying to do it really, really well. Really good job of keeping it out of there.
So, where do you? Big thing is, and I think we've gotten a lot better at doing this in our department. There's a couple stragglers here and there that I don't think we're ever going to break them with a habit. Wearing your gloves on every call, and I'm talking structural gloves on automatic alarms, gas calls, obviously fires. But you go to a smells and bells call, 90% of the time, you know what it's going to be, but you still got to be prepared for the 10% that it's an actual job, which it happened a couple shifts back. When I was working overtime, putting your gloves on. Where do you keep your gloves?
On my hands now. So it's funny you say that. I knew you were going to bring that up. Again, a habit I got into from back in the volunteer day when I first started volunteering. I volunteer again now, but when I first started and caught the bug, the guy that they said, hey, you're just going to follow that guy around all day and just do what he does until you get the hang of things. And that was the guy. Well, he was a city, I think he was a battalion chief at the time. Then he became deputy chief and all that. I didn't know that at the time, but he had this. He said, hey, wherever you put your gloves day one, don't ever change it. Don't ever change it, because that primal instinct, or that, what do they call it? Primitive thinking, primal instinct, whatever. The first thing that
Yeah.
you do, that's going to set your impression. And you'll always revert to that, no matter how many times you change things up. And it's just a matter of, you really have to break a habit thereafter if you change something. So I put it in my right pocket, both of them, both gloves in my right pocket all the time. It's always in my right pocket, always in my right pocket. And then
So
once I go ahead,
right pocket is in with our gear. Our right when we say right pocket, it's going to be our coat pocket, because our bellows
coat
pocket
pocket.
and our bunk pants. Our bellows pocket and our coat pants has our emergency escape rope system in it. We've integrated it into our bunker pants, so we lost the right leg pocket in our pants. Good and bad. It is what it is. We've been, guys that never known any difference. They'll never know any difference. I had bunker pants that had two pockets before. I think after a year of wearing the emergency escape ropes, it was a no factor to me. So you keep your gloves in your coat.
I did, and only for about a year while I was on the job here. Then I got working a lot. I do a lot of swaps. One of the people I ended up working with a lot at the beginning was a lieutenant down at the big station. Used to be one of your guys, and he hammered in a lot of these little habitual things that made a huge impact. And one of them was, why aren't your gloves on? Why are your gloves not on? So I got in the habit of setting my gloves next to my hood, that's currently where it's sitting on that floorboard, so that I can never miss them. And if I'm getting on and off that rig, I'm going to a job. If it's a fire job, I'm putting those gloves on before I exit in the back seat. I put the fire gloves on. So when I get off that rig, they're already on. I'm used to that low dexterity no matter what, because everything we do is with fire gloves. that's not including rope jobs or extrication. Those are something completely different. I have a little go bag. It's kind of like a duty bag that a cop uses actually. And I have it nice, neat little organization between all my gloves. And when it's tucked away back in my locker, it goes in there. But that's the first thing I pull out. So that's right there next to my hood on the floorboard, ready to go. So when an alarm comes in, even if it's a smells and bells, the whole turnout goods go on. So hood on, pants up, jacket on. Excuse me, I the radio purse on, jacket on, then I throw my gloves on. So I'm ready to rock and roll. When I get off, anything I grab, I'm always used to the gloves. So they no longer ever go in my pocket. Even on the fire ground when we're picking up hose or packing up tools, gloves are still on. Always.
Were you ever a glove strap guy?
No, I was not. I think I tried them once, about maybe 12 years ago, and I lost a glove, and that was it. That was it for me. It broke it. Nope, never gonna do that again.
I'm just not a big having stuff dangling off my turnout coat. It's just another something
Christmas
else that
tree
just can
ornament.
get. Yeah, right, exactly. I've never been a fan of the glove straps. So my gloves, same type of gear bag, not as nice as some of the guys like you have. Just a old duffel bag. I think the Union bought us. But gloves come out of so one of the SCBA mask and the gloves come out of the bag at the same time. Gloves go right on the doghouse next to me, so they're right there, right by our CAD computer screen. So, and I don't put them on right away because sitting in the front seat
You
doing
gotta
that
work
touch
that.
screen,
Yeah.
yeah, I gotta use the touch screen with my fingers. But by the time not even 30 seconds away, I can get those gloves on and do what I need to do and get the gloves on in a timely fashion. All right, so we hit the gloves, we talked about our bunker pants, how we lay them out. My hood's still laying on our bunker pants. I've never really thought about the cancer stuff that's still in our turnout gear, and with the hood, there's probably something I could change. Coats are pretty much the same. In the winter, I just turn my coat inside out. I hang it instead of inside towards the truck. I hang it outside towards the truck, so all the truck grime just goes on the outside of the coat.
Okay. So by inside out, it's just backwards. It's not like you pull the
Just
sleeves out,
backwards. Yeah,
unless it's got to
yeah, yeah.
dry out.
Right. That's another thing. We could talk about another thing. Your boss used to do it, and I kind of picked it. I always thought it was funny until I realized what he was doing. Is when you fluff up the inside of the liners, you pull the liners up a little bit more and allows airflow to get between the outer shell and the liner, especially
Mhm.
if you're a bunker pants. We had a couple 80-degree days here, or you do some live fire training, sweating pretty good, and you didn't use your spares. You can take your liners and kind of pull them up a little bit, and it creates that air gap, and they dry out pretty quick doing it that way. And I do that regularly. When I feel my bunkers are a little sweatier than I would like to be.
There's a
So
couple of tricks out there for doing that too, without having to put them away on the Ram drying rack or anything like that.
right,
There's a million different things. We got that giant fan out there, and I take two
yeah,
parking
yeah,
cones and I lay them down next to, so it's still by the door where I get on and off the rig, and I jam one just kind of half in the leg tube, and the other one, and now I
yeah,
create these two little cones. It's literally a nozzle effect, and I have the fan blowing right in there. It just dries them out like within an hour, so that way it's
yeah.
not tucked away. I don't have to go far for my gear.
So gear setup. All right, yes, and then probably the most important piece of equipment we wear is our SCBA. And we talked about it at one of the other two podcasts about one of the things I do check in my SCBA. So run me through when are you checking? How are you checking your SCBA?
I do it right off the bat. So we got our morning thing, whether it's a workout before work. I used to do that. My gym closed, so now I no longer get that opportunity to do it well before 6 a.m. So that's a 3:30 start for me. I get in. First thing I do is coffee. Coffee on. While that's brewing, I go out to the rig. I bring my stuff over to the truck because, again, if there's a call, and this has happened, so this is all trial and error stuff. If there's a call, I just get on the rig. The SCBA thing is the last thing I check before getting into the whole rig. So this is just still personal gear. The first thing I do is connect up, my mask right directly on the MMR, because that's how most of us, I think, carry that. And I've gotten in the habit now to leave the bag, the mask bag or some sort of protective thing over the lens because it gets bashed up in the back seat. So I just trying a longevity. I've had mine last the last 8 years. Just got a newer one. I don't want to get it destroyed. No sense in wasting money. I pull the pack out right out of the seat. So ours sits in the seat. It's got the quick releases. There's no strap that you gotta work a lever or a little button. It just slides in, pops out, and there's that top piece that cradles, rocks in
It's
and out.
inertia.
Yeah, one
Yeah,
of those jobs.
yeah.
And I pull it right out of the whole seat. Step down off the rig. First thing I do, always check the pack straps, fully extended. And we have MSAs at work. They feel a little bit heavier. I'm sure they are slightly heavier, probably not too far off, but they feel like they weigh 1,000 pounds more. Check those straps, and then the cradle for the lower back, like the lumbar support, it has a pivoting action to it. So your shoulder straps can get twisted around the waist strap on both sides. So it's typically your waist straps go around, and outside the waist strap is where your shoulder straps run down to your hips. Sometimes that waist strap gets in between the pack frame and the shoulder straps. And that it really boogers the whole thing up. So you're just kind of making sure that those things, and it's just how it lands when you stick it back in the seat, get done with a job. Sometimes those things get interlocked in the wrong position. So I check the straps. Then, okay, check to see the bottle. And then I unlatch the strap that goes around the bottle that holds it on. So I loosen the bottle, and then I check to make sure that the high pressure line is fully engaged, the threading is fully engaged. Sometimes those things wiggle loose. And then we have the MSA has a dovetail at the base. So at the backside of the gauge, that's how it seats onto the pack itself. And by cranking it in and out of the seat, yeah, it looks like a V. As you crank it in and out of the seat, that thing slowly works its way up the back of the pack. So it can be completely dislodged. So the only thing that's holding it onto your pack frame is just that metal band strap that snaps on and snaps off. So I always check that.
I found it a lot of times. I find it not often, but I found where like one side is seated properly and one side is not seated at all. I haven't really found too many times where it's not, the whole thing's not seated, but it is a good idea to check, pull the pack out, make sure that bottle is seated properly. Because last thing you want to do is have, your bottle being held in by just a high pressure line.
And again, trial and error. The only reason I'm doing that is because when we first got the MSA packs we have now, I think we got them like the week before I went to the academy. And when I was in the academy, one came unseated and it caught on something and it ripped the pack apart. So it was dangling. My bottle was dangling by my high pressure line. So I had to use duct tape to hold it together. I was back in the action quick, but I learned from that to always check to make sure that dovetail is seated at the bottom. So that's the only reason I do it. From there, then I fire the pack up, turn it on. Well, check the MMR, make sure that the valve is closed because you don't need air just pissing around, wildly. Turn the valve on, go through the normal procedures to start it up, make sure your gauges match, let the pass alarm cycle through. That particular section, so from starting the bottle and the pass alarm, I may wait till 8, 9 o'clock just because guys waking up at 7 or 5 to 7 don't need that headache before having their first cup of coffee. That's kind of annoying. We're in a kind of a little bit of a smaller house than, say, the large station or the other station. A little bit more space between where the people sleep and the apparatus bay floor. At our station, it's right near each other, so you can hear that thing, and it's annoying.
Yeah.
So I try to be a little, going back to the respect thing. I know what that's like. I don't get bothered when guys do it because I'd rather have them check it than not. And then, going through my gauges, and then when I shut the tank off, then I slowly bleed it down a little bit until you hear, so we don't have vibro alert. We have the bell goes off. I let it do its thing, so it's low pressure alarms. And then once it gets to that, then I press it up to my face to make sure that I have breathing. I probably should do it before turning the pack off, but I just don't want to waste a ton of air, so I might as well use what's in the line as it's fizzling out to make sure that I don't have a sticky valve or anything.
When we got those packs, the one thing I noticed as a fireman, and because we were going through a lot, it felt like we were changing bottles every shift because bleeding air out, just checking our packs. And the MSAs, and I can't speak because I haven't worn a Scott in, well, we get the MSAs in 2012. Was that when you got hired?
No, I was hired like right at the beginning of 17, but oh, you know what? We did get that. I was still a volunteer.
Yeah.
So it was, might have been 14. I think 2014,
So when we started
14,
checking these
15.
MSAs, I was noticed we were going through a lot of air. So when I was like, all right, I'm going to figure out how much air, just turn the bottle on. So the remote gauge goes to full to reads the pressure the same as what's on the bottle, and then turn the bottle off. And I want to breathe it down. And I want to, because our remote gauge is digital, so it tells you a digital reading of how much air is in that bottle. So after I turn it on the second time, you know how much air is been bled out.
Mhm.
It's 40 to 45 pounds every time you turn that bottle on to have all the electronics activate, have the gauge come up all the way. So from the bottle to the MMR is 40 to 45 pounds of air that is in that system. So if our bottles are 4,500 PSIs, 10 checks, 10 shifts, you're down quite a bit of air. You're down to almost 4,000 pounds. So you could get 2-3 shifts out, and then you got to change your bottle out because that's going to be out of the green, and that's a whole nother topic for another day. What's full and what's not full? Is 4,500 full, or is it in the green full? According to the standards, as long as that needle's in the green on the bottle, it's considered full. Me, with my family, I'd rather have those couple extra breaths to make sure it's full. But the one thing I do differently when I check my pack, and I talked about it before, is I sit in the seat. I'll check the pack, make sure the bottle's full, and then I sit in the seat and actually wear the pack, just so the pass alarm's in the side that I want, in my right hand side. And when I put my mask on, I'll turn the bottle on and turn it off just like you do. But instead of cracking the bleeder right away, I put the mask on and breathe it down until I hear the halfway alarm. Because on the MSAs, when you get to when the pack thinks you're at a half amount of air, it lets off a long tone, says you're at half air. Once it's at half, hits that long tone for half air. Then I check my bleeder. I turn my bleeder valve on and I turn it off. I make sure that's functioning. Then I slowly bleed it out to make sure the low air alarm goes off. By the time that all happens, I've probably sat in the seat long enough for the motion sensor to go off on the pass alarm. So I let the motion sensor go off. I don't let it go into full alarm because, like you said, I don't want it blaring out the firehouse. So I quickly hit the green buttons on the side of the pack to turn the pass off. But then I do manually activate the pass alarm and make sure that button works as well. Then I quickly turn it off just to make sure that the manual pass works as well. So I think we're doing the same thing. Just you're doing the purge valve first, and I'm breathing air out of the mask first. But we're both accomplishing the same thing.
But I'm thinking about this as you're saying it. So the deficit in my version of a check is that I'm not watching the heads up display. So we got the little LED lights that go through, the inside the mask. I'm not watching those go from full green down to whatever, as it ratchets down to its full alarm system. So I'm missing that step. So that's out of laziness. It's a habit, but be honest, it's lazy. It's not good discipline on that part. So I missed that. But you mentioned sitting in it instead of staring at it. So since you brought that up the last time we spoke, I've actually been doing that. I thought that was a really cool thing. I never thought of that before. Yeah. Oh yeah. Now I'm sitting in the seat, waiting for this thing to go. Cause you're absolutely right. Habit of, is it in your left hand when you're staring at it? And is it in your right hand when you're sitting in it? Oh, Jesus. Just like the glove thing. Somebody pointed that out. I had to work hard to overwrite a habit of from putting it in my pocket, just making sure that the damn gloves are always on. And that's now habitual. So this is my next project. My little micro project is to sit in the seat, fire it up, and do my check.
So one thing we didn't hit on we talked about the portables and setting them up. We both use our radio pouches. Changing the batteries. You change your battery every shift.
I do.
Do you just go off the readout on the portable?
No,
you change your battery every shift?
I change it every morning. but then I'm also a little bit OCD, so I go around. I won't take the batteries out of the other guys's, but what I'll do is all the spare batteries we have, I pop them off the charger, make sure if there's any sitting around, those end up on the charger. Try and pull them out, put them on, let them do the reconditioning if they need to, or recycle whatever it needs. Make sure they're all topped off. And then throughout each tour, typically this is a phrase that we kind of we have differences of opinions throughout the different houses, but both shifts. So shift one, day one and day two, that's technically a tour. Some guys say that one shift is a tour, so one day. So for my first day one and day two, within that time frame, I will pull batteries out, put them into other radios, spare radios, and let them just stay on and drain all the way, or at least work them halfway, just so that they're working. Lithium ion shouldn't be going all the way empty, all the way charged, all the way empty all the time. So I like to give it a little bit, maybe down to 80, down to 50, and charge back up. So I go around the house and do that regularly. But for me personally, no, yes, I grab a fresh battery, pop it in, throw the old one on the charger, and then I actually have gotten in the habit of grabbing one of the fresh spare ones and setting it next to in my bag as well. So I bring one with me all the time because we've gotten, only because it's happened once or twice, we've drained, batteries while we're out there. I just need a fresh battery.
So one thing we get, like, the officers on our rig, kind of like a gentleman's thing. Usually when we're walking in, it's either, hey, the battery needs to be swapped out, or, hey, I've already swapped the battery out. We come in, we get up early, the battery gets swapped out, and say, hey, batteries you're all set with a fresh battery. We also keep a fresh battery, a charged battery up on the dash for us, because it just seems like the officers' batteries are, drain out more than the firemen do, just, the nature of the position. But the other thing with batteries is our tick batteries. That's another thing. I at least try to swap those out. Not every shift, because our tick battery doesn't get used it as much. But our first tour, our first shift in our tour, when we work, 1 day, 2 days off, then 1 day and 4 days off. That first day I come in, I try to swap the battery out on the tick, just to make sure there's a good fresh battery in the tick. Even though our battery, the battery technology for our ticks has come a long ways since we first got our ticks on the rigs. I remember we would burn through batteries. They would last, like, if you got 30 minutes out of a tick battery, that was a good day. Some of these batteries, and it was just where they were on the rigs, where the chargers were on the rigs, we were frying batteries. Lesson learned: don't put your tick battery chargers on the doghouse. You will fry the batteries, and you'll blow through batteries. Put them somewhere where there's no heat. But since we moved the tick charger, I feel like our battery life has gotten 1,000 times better.
Yeah, and my boss he's pretty adamant about changing it out at the beginning of his shift. He always swaps it out.
Yeah. All right, so we covered gear, covered SCBA, batteries. All right, so you got your gear on the stuff, on the rig. Now we got to check the rig. What are you doing? How are you checking the rig? Who are you checking the rig with? Do you divvy up the responsibilities? And we're talking as a backseat fireman. The chauffeur's got his own stuff to do. As an officer, I take more of as a newer officer, I should say, with a newer crew, I had more of a hands-on approach to checking the rig to kind of set the tone of how I wanted the rig checked. Now, with the guys I've been working with for a while, at least the two regulars I have, not including the probationary fireman, more hands off. I trust but verify that the rig check's done correctly. So when I was a newer lieutenant, and even when I got promoted to captain, and then I had I was come up to captain off the staff, and now I got two guys I've never worked with. I had a very hands-on approach to doing the rig checks with the guys. Now like I said, more hands off. I can come in the office if I got to catch up on officers' work while they're out doing the rig checks. I can hear tools being ran. I can hear saws being checked, tools being cleaned. I know it's getting done. So walk me through how you're doing your rig check in the morning.
Well, the norm has shifted. As I said, we have a lot of new people. So now it's not that the responsibility dumps to the brand new guy, the probationary guy, or the guy that's got 1 year on. It's just that you want them as they rotate through and do their 6 months or 1 year on each apparatus before they get kind of more permanently placed. They need more reps in. So we've gotten into this latest habit, and by latest I mean about the last 2 years, where that new guy is kind of doing it on his own. But I'm a big proponent of don't just day one let them go and fumble around on their own. They don't know what they're looking for. You give them a list. They have no idea what some of these tools are. They get their basics from the academy, but there's some specialized equipment on our rig. There's actually a lot of specialized equipment. They don't know what they're looking at. So it's good to walk it through them. So like I said, if I get there between 6 and 6:30, the rest of my time leading up to 7, I go back in, grab my cup of coffee, because by this point it better be finished or finished brewing. Then I go back out and then I do my own rig check. All right, I've gotten comfortable enough, and it may be a bad thing that I don't need to look at the list to know what's supposed to be on the truck, because I've been here, or at least been at that station for a little while, that I do know what comes on and off that rig. So as I open up every compartment, start pulling gear out, I'm kind of spot checking. So it's closer to a quick glance than a fine tooth comb. Okay. And then when the newer person gets in, they get the printed sheet. They're doing the official check. They're not pencil whipping. Most of them do not. It's been a long time since I've seen somebody pencil whip one, and then let them go through it. All right. When they first get there, we do it a couple weeks with them directly side by side. Then for the next few weeks, they kind of do it on their own. And I try to tell them, hey, I've already checked it, so you better be thorough. But that's just my relationship from black hatter to black hatter in the back seat. Let them get through it, get those reps in on their own so they solidify. If I go out there and help them, side by side, we open up every single compartment one on the driver's side together. They may not get that same feel as if they're out there looking on their own. So it shifts, it changes every day. The norm is the normal norm, right? Because as I said, this is shifting. The normal norm is we print off all the sheets. We still use paper in our station. Print off the sheets. We just split them. One guy does driver side, one guy does passenger side. We meet in the back, type of thing. And then next time we'll flip flop it. At least minimum every day one, but we look to make sure that every shift we're doing a full on rig check. I mentioned that specialized equipment. So after that new person, if it is a new person, they finish up theirs. I just run through the check sheet, see what they get, and compare notes. And if I notice that, oh yeah, everything's checked off, I'll be like, well, you know what, that one hand light, I know for a fact is missing. So okay, Let's double check some work. Like you said, trust but verify on a lower approach. Like I said, black hat to black hat, I do that. And then when it gets to the specialized equipment, so rope bags is a big one for us. Okay, then we go and sit down. We pull up every single piece out of those rope bags and put it all back in. So we both get our hands on. We're both visually seeing it. A lot of questions ends up coming out. So it's a more thorough approach to doing a truck check, and we take our time with that. But they know at this point, they know how many Halligans are on there, their placement, how many saws, everything like that. And then we go into firing up saws and all that other stuff later. But for that truck check, kind of let them do it, because I already did it once. Let them do it once, and then we go through some of the more technical aspects together.
Yeah, I would say, just as a word of advice for anybody that's going to be a new company officer or has been transferred to a different group, I think it's a good idea to take a more hands-on approach with the truck checks. One, it gets you out there with the guys, conversation, coffee in hand. If the guys want to do it themselves, then just stay out there and observe. But you got to learn, especially if you're coming to a new company, you got to know where all the tools and equipment are on that rig. And you should get to the point, like you just said, where you can open up a compartment and just by a quick glance, you should know if something's missing or if the compartment's squared away. I still think a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year fireman should still do that formal truck check that we talked about with, clipboard, the paper truck check, and pen in hand, and going through it, starting the saws. We got a couple houses by us. We have, our neighbor across the street. We have a love-hate relationship with him. He loves us, then he hates us, and then he loves us. We try to be respectful to him. Sundays are his mornings to sleep in, so we kind of don't start the saws until a little later on Sunday. He doesn't care about any other day of the week.
Yeah, instead of 7, it's 7:05.
Yeah, right.
No, we wait till about like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock.
Yeah, Sundays it's a later day to start the saws. But like I said, as a newer officer, you have to be out on that truck bay floor doing the checks with the guys. As a company officer who's transferred over, transferred to a different company, you got to be out there doing the truck check with the guys. Something I don't do, and I think it's just because I'm in my habits. I work overtime on other groups on a day shift. I should be out on the floor doing the truck checks with the guys, but usually I'm seeing guys I haven't seen in a while, just because of the nature of our shift. So I get caught up talking shop or talking life with, an officer I haven't seen in, a week or two, or, even maybe a month, and just talking about whatever it is. And then the truck check's done before I even get out on the floor. But, you hit on, like the technical, the special ops equipment that we have on the rig, even the non-special ops equipment that we have on the rig, it's very important to get your hands on the equipment. You're not going to know it doesn't work. It's the fire service. Stuff could work the night before. You could have a job where you cut a car, the hearse tool worked perfectly. They cleaned it, they put it away. For whatever reason, little gremlins get in there. Next thing you know, the hearse tool doesn't work, or the saw doesn't fire up. Something happens, and you're not going to know that unless you check the rig in the morning and start the equipment up. That's not to say you get on scene and the same Murphy's law occurs. Boss, we checked the saw in the morning. I don't know why it's not firing up. That stuff happens. That's what you got to overcome it. But cleaning tools, you guys clean tools in the
Yeah,
in
it's
the
kind of more
morning.
on an
What?
individual base. I think I'm more likely to be cleaning tools just because I'm looking for something to fill out the morning. Again, it all goes back to the coffee I drink. It seems like way too much lately. 2 pots throughout the day, but I'm still
Yeah,
sipping my morning cup of coffee, and then I go back to the bench grinder if I notice one tool. I try to pick one or two tools to clean up each shift. It's hard to keep up, especially in the wintertime. Stuff rusts up the next day. It's incredible. You mentioned the Hearst tool. That's probably a little bit more of a higher priority than worrying about the Halligan. Although I like my Halligan clean because I use that the most. So what can I get done, and all of that morning check. So start from the beginning all the way to having all clean tools, everything's packed up on the rig with a clean rig. That could take an hour. It could take a couple hours. Depending on how many people are there and what else is going. You just mentioned, you'd like to have a quick chat with the other officer on that's off going. Our guys, we do passing information back and forth. Sometimes we do that while we move. Sometimes we're sitting on the front bumper with the truck bay open, watching the sun come up, and shooting the breeze about what happened the night before, any issues with the rig, stuff that's important to our job, and then just a quick, hey, how's the kids, how's the dogs, how's the house, whatever they got going on in their life, too. So it can sometimes delay that morning setup. The most important is at least gears on the rig, ready to rock. As soon as that job comes in, tools and equipment. As long as they said you kind of trusted them, as long as they said, hey, everything's straight. Okay, we got a minute to chat. But as soon as that chat's over, they leave. Okay, boom, we're back into that fold.
One thing I picked up, and it's probably something. If you look at my tools at home, you would never think I was like this way because the way I'm at work. But it's something. My grandfather was a general contractor, and I always think back to his tool shed. When I would go stay with him for a couple weeks up in the Thousand Islands. When he was retired, he still had his tool shed. He still had all his original tools that he had. The old Porter cable tools that you could buy at Chase Pickin that's no longer around. And I have some of his tools that I use, but his tools were pristine. You look at it. You go to a mechanic shop that does that job for a living, and his tools are pristine because those tools are his livelihood. Now my home DIY tools at home, they're I'll admit they're unkempt. They're thrown around the house. They are where I left them. Shame on me for doing it that way. They still work, but they're not something that's putting money on my table. They're not. I don't have to rely on them on a daily basis. So when I get to work, I'm a little more stickler on, especially the two tools that sit in my seat is a Halligan bar and an officer tool. And if there is a speck of rust on those, or if they don't look like I need them to look, they're getting tuned up, they're getting cleaned up. For it's probably while the black hats, the firemen in the back are doing the truck checks, I'm cleaning my tools up to make sure my two tools are ready for the 24 hours that I got to work. Because those tools could be, you know, I might have to rely on those to save my life. I might have to rely on those to save someone else's life. And if they're not in good working order, then shame on me. The other thing is, and go back to the lieutenant on the other truck company that was my fireman. He had a good point when he was a fireman. We were cleaning tools, and he goes, you walk into somebody's house and you have a tool that looks like crap. He goes, what does that say? He goes, the taxpayers bought this tool for us, and you're not going to take care of it. He goes, why would they buy us all their stuff if we're not, why would they balk at the tax increase, or what, everybody loves firemen.
Everywhere it goes up a little bit every year,
Right. So if the tax increase goes up and the budget goes up, and you walk into a house with a tool that looks like, like shit, they're going to question why that budget line's going up if you can't take care of the piece of equipment that they bought you. A Halligan bar should last you a lifetime. Yeah, can they break? Yeah, they can break. Do you might need a new one here and there for overuse? Possibly. But if you keep those things in working order, and the taxpayer sees you come off that rig with a shiny tool, they're gonna be like, that fire department's squared away. And then when you need something else down the line, they're not gonna say, well, they don't take care of their stuff, why would we buy something else for them? They're gonna be like, no, they take care of their stuff. They really need this other piece of equipment, and then they're not gonna fight you over the tax rates. I mean, there are people that are gonna fight over everything, but it's company pride, but it's also showing that you care about the community and you care about the money that they're, fire equipment tools aren't cheap, and the better we can take care of them, the better public perception we'll have, and it's also save money if we take care of our stuff. Just something, like I said, it was just something I picked up, in my mind with my grandfather and his, how he kept his tools, and then just reiterated it when I had that discussion with my fireman, who's now a lieutenant.
How about from another perspective too? So that's looking at essentially from the tool's perspective, or somebody looking at the tool rather. How about when we get to a job? Let's say it's a automatic alarm at a residential. You get there, they're standing at the front door trying to wave you off. I was just burnt food just for you mind if we just take a quick sweep? Yeah, sure. So where do we put that Halligan? We lean it up against the siding next to the door or something. You ever seen a rusty Halligan when you lean it up on nice clean siding and it just starts to smear, or maybe there's soot and grime from the last job, we didn't take care of it real quick. If it's something because we're caught between jobs, okay, just set it to the side, be a little respectful. But you go into a house and, I've seen guys set it down like on an end table or on a coffee table or something just to get it out of the way in order to manipulate whatever they got in their hands. Man, you set that rusty tool down. It's not just that it looks old and, and unkempt. It's that, hey, what about, why? It's like walking into somebody's white living room, white carpeted living room with muddy boots. Like, why would you do that?
Here. We have a lot of the white living rooms in this town.
Yeah, with the plastic couches
on it. Yeah, white couches, white carpet, glass tiles.
Yeah. You want to be respectful to them as well. So it goes a long way keeping your tools clean. And sometimes it's hard to keep up with it. So it takes everybody in the company or at the station. We call it a company here because it's the group of guys working on the truck. That is the truck company. And together we live under the same house, so we call it our station. It takes everybody to pitch in and clean those tools. We got 2 8-foot hooks sitting on the front bumper. We got 2 6s hanging off the back of the cab. That's 4 tools out exposed to the elements. Like we said, 9 months of snow, 3 months of bad sledding, that stuff degrades real quickly. So that paint comes off. It chips real easy. A lot of places, they argue against painting tools. Our hooks, I think, are pretty much the only thing that's painted, maybe the tips of our ladders, but essentially the only hand tools we paint is our hooks. we got to keep up with that. And that's that protective coating. We use a special paint to try and stave off that rust. And as soon as it gets nicked off or whatever, if we don't take it back, polish it down and repaint it or something, it's just rusting and rusting and rusting. The tool will still do its job, but now it looks like hell sitting on the side of the rig.
Right.
And our rig isn't getting younger by the days. So let's not make it look like it's older than it really is. Let's take pride in it. And it takes everybody. So if you can grab one tool or two tools in a 24-hour shift and clean them up, yeah, it might take you. It might take all day to try and complete that, but it really goes a long way.
And another good thing about, if everybody participates in it, in our firehouse, we can go to the back of the rig where we have like a little separate table back there if you want to hang out in the truck bay where the workbench is. And, if a guy's on the bench grinder, another guy can get, rag and oil, or I can sit there and, I can just go through the daily briefing while they're back there cleaning tools and whatever. But it also creates a bond between the guys. That little issue when they're doing, it's not hard work. It might be tedious work, but they're working together in cleaning tools, and it does create a bond. It brings the company together a little bit more, and it gives them some, ownership in the tools. It gives them pride in the tools, pride in the rig. And then when they come in another shift and, if the off-going group leaves the tools dirty, whatever, and it happens, they might have forgot about it and they had a late run. And if they get mad, I'm okay with them getting mad at the tools being left dirty, because that just means they care about it.
Yeah.
And then, you know what? We got to clean them for a little bit longer. It's not a big deal. We just sit there and drink coffee and clean the tools. Another thing I like to do when we're cleaning tools or maintaining tools as a company officer, and as, I got my two senior firemen or instructors, they use it as time as almost like a mini drill for our probie, or, I'll use it as a mini drill for our, just as a company as a whole, especially like, breaking apart the saws. If you don't know what you're doing with the saws and small engines, don't break them apart. You should only go to the level that you're comfortable with. Luckily, one of my guys, he grew up with small engines. He knows.
Yeah, he's a whiz.
I've learned a lot just watching him with stuff. But it's good to have that hands-on knowledge of the tools, and it's a good little training session that you can do while you're doing that tedious work. You make it educational for the guys. Hey, or if you just take the Halligan bar. Hey, do you know why the forks are this way? Or do you know why the adze it was developed on the Halligan in this fashion? Or, stuff like that. Talk about, this is we have a high lift jack on our rig. This is why we have the high lift jack on our rig. This is the pounds it works on. When you're using the high lift jack, be careful. Always have two hands on the handle, because this is what can happen. Then it turns into, from cleaning the tools to, let's bring the jack over here. Let's jack something up and we'll show you exactly what can happen if you don't have control of the handle. Then it turns into, an hour and a half drill that you never intended to, but it's awesome. And this is all starting from, you got your stuff on the rig, you've done your truck check. There's a couple tools that need maintenance. Next thing you know, you're into an hour and a half drill, and it's 10:30 in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning. And the day's flown by. Those are the good days. Those are good days.
A couple calls in between don't help. And they also offset, it kind of pushes delays, if you will. Some of this maintenance, the checking the rig over. Like I said, that's why it's super important, at least to me. 6:30, get your gear ready to rock and roll. So inside of this setup, okay, so we got this whole morning setup for us. So as the individual, as the company, how do you handle your briefs on your group, or at least for your crew? Where does that fall in line with this whole thing?
It's tough because some chiefs are really good at getting the briefs out. Some chiefs, they get the briefs out when they can. I kind of have an idea of what's going on that day, and I'll just kind of give them a quick. It's very informal. Usually while they're doing the truck check, we got this going on at this time, we got this going on at that time. And then, our training officer always has some sort of formalized training on the calendar that we try to get done. And then if there's something else, I'll probably dream up while laying in bed the night before, or I thought about the prior shift. Then I'll make a mental note, or I'll even write it down, or send myself a text message, or send myself an email. Say, we got to work on this. I'll tell the senior fireman, hey, I want to get this done today. So like today's training, we had foam training. The entire department is running through the foam training with our new foam inductors. But at the same time, I was like, hey, we need to get, our probies have our probie checkoff sheets that they got to get done in their 1 year of probation. I was like, we need to throw some more ladders with the probie. We got to make sure he's up to speed with the ladders. So I was like, we got to get that done as well. Then lo and behold, just like everything else in the fire service, the phone call comes in, and the entire schedule that we had going, it got mixed up because of, just normal stuff that was going on.
Always happens. Yeah, something.
Yeah, one guy we had a gear fitting appointment, house inspections going on, people over here, people over there. Not a big deal. Just the formal training that the training officer had got switched to the afternoon. The stuff that I wanted to do in the afternoon, we did it in the morning. But our briefing is more informal than I will say every other group. When I work overtime on the other groups, it's a almost like a military, I wouldn't say military roll call where they're standing in front of the rigs and, getting attendance. But, I've worked on other groups where they do the roll call in the morning at the kitchen table, and some groups have the company officer always does the roll call report. Some groups, they hand it off to the aide that will do the roll call report. Some groups will do the roll call report a little more formal, but out in the truck bay. I think having the roll call report sets a good tone for the day. I'm just not a formal roll call report guy, because the roll call reports are sent out to everybody. Everybody gets them. So if you don't see it, my roll call in the morning is more just, hey, this is what we need to get done today. This is what has to get done today per, the chief's office. This is what's come down. If there's any pertinent emails that have been sent out, just a reminder, there's these emails that were sent out. Road closures are a big one. But like you asked how I do it, mine's more pretty informal. That's just the way I work.
Yeah, that's fine. That's an answer. For those listening, our roll call report, it's a document that kind of absorbs information from a couple different angles. One is our scheduling system. So on one side of this roll call, we actually get two forms that come out. One is the roster, one is the roll call. The roster shows every riding position for the entire department on that 24-hour period. So that it even tells who's not there, who's supposed to be there, and off on vacation, sick, comp, whatever, and who's filling in for each one of those positions. So it might be split up, a day shift and a night shift. That's two different people coming in and coming off, where they're assigned, what their position on that rig is. It'll say any special duties. It tells us who's on light duty and what they're assigned to for the day. That roll call portion will give us, top left, it'll show all the drills that are assigned for that day. So we have a calendar that's filled out pretty much for the whole year, but it kind of gets fine-tuned a month ahead or 2 months ahead. So as an instructor, I look at that. So that's one thing. I definitely pull over to the side of the throughway to look at it. All right. But I take a look at that calendar some point in my morning, sometimes as well. I'm brewing coffee before I leave the house, actually, just to kind of get a heads up, or the night before I fall asleep. Setting my alarms. I check that calendar for the next day or 2 shifts out to see what's coming up. Because like you just alluded to, everything shifts. One thing, a little tiny stone gets thrown in there and throws the whole day off. So I kind of like to look at the drill aspect of what we're supposed to be doing. Typically, we have a morning drill, afternoon drill, or we might have one big drill for just that one day. So if it's something big, a walkthrough at the airport, because we got the airport that's adjacent, kind of half in our town, half out. It's kind of hard to explain. If it's something with that, a big market, we have a large northeastern market that's right here in our backyard. We do a lot of training with them. If it's something large scale, I just kind of like to know what it is, so that if there's nothing on the calendar, and it just says, hey, ladders, ground ladders. All right. There's an option to take what they recommend for the day and run that drill. Or if there's something specific because we have a new guy that needs some sign offs for the probationary book, we can adjust. If it's just says technical rescue, ropes and knots, boy, that's, you didn't really tell me anything. It just says, hey, which compartment to open up for the day. I might then reach out to one of the other instructors or speak with my boss first. Hey, hey, LT, do you mind? It says ropes and knots. We're supposed to do this. It just wants to tie some knots in the back of the bay and call it a day. Do you mind if we work on the artificial high point? I had this thing in mind. I want to work out some kinks for. Can we run that? Yeah. And he'll give me the go ahead. I wait for him to give me the go ahead. He's my boss, so he's got to give me the clearance. And then I might, if it's something that requires more than just a company, I might go, that other company, Station 2 guys, that engine, we haven't played with them in a while. I know they would like to come over. Can we give them a call? Or when we have, at least on my group, the other truck company likes to get out of the house and monkey around out there with some rope stuff. And we got some plans in the work that we've been kind of hashing out in the background. We're just looking for the perfect day that it won't upset the rest of the training or admin business, whatever. So we can do a dual company training. That's why I think that so that roll call portion I look for before it actually gets sent out to everybody or printed off and done enough. We kind of do a more formal briefing right after the truck checks. We sit down, hash out at the kitchen table, and then we go back to whatever else we were finishing up, plan out our day, or at least a skeleton plan for the day. Also on there's small items of business that might be a new OG that came out or admin order, just a reminder, hey, check this thing out. It's kind of more for the officer. Hey, reminder to read off to your group this new admin order. Maybe the guys don't get emailed to their phones or they haven't checked in a while. Just print it off and talk to them. And of course, there's the weather report. I think 21st century, everybody knows what the heck's going on with weather, but in case you're not, it's available to you. I think that just about sums it up. Anything that's out of service, like if a rig is out of service and switch to a reserve, what's the reserve, where they're stationed, what's happening, and then any other pertinence, special details might be on for the day, whether it's a company assigned to a special detail or whether it's something like we just had Memorial Day, flags were down to half staff for part of the day between certain hours, depending on what the president says. That'll be in the roll call.
Yeah, that's all good stuff for the beginning of the day. Like I said, the beginning of the day sets a tone for the shift. One of the things as a company officer, one thing you have to do is, some guys are creatures of habit, and they have in their mind that this is how the day is going to go. And then you said one little fly in the ointment, and it ruins their whole mojo. And sometimes you got to bring them back down to earth and be like, look, it's not that bad. Look, we're just going to go. We're going to roll with it. This is how training is going to be. We're moving training over here. We're going to do this over here. We're going to get our work done. And then it's going to be the end of the day. Sometimes, that's a senior man should be able to handle that. Sometimes a company officer has to step in and handle that. But that first hour to an hour and a half of your shift is going to set the tone for the rest of the day. And I think between getting in early, getting your, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe, and I'm talking pots of coffee here.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Before your shift starts, getting your gear set up for success, getting the tools in an orderly fashion. Once all that's done, all the other stuff is simple at that point. Answer calls, do the daily duties, do some training, and then the most important thing, I joke, is the meals.
The old
what are the meals?
9:45, what's for dinner question.
Yeah.
Sometimes we try to plan that out ahead of time. I'll shop either. If I'm super early, I'll just swing by that market I was talking about and pick some stuff up on the way in, or I'll catch something. I really got a hanker and I'll get it the night before and bring it in. But most of the time we know we got dinner coming up in a few hours. Let's try to plan that in the day too. Having you guys, go ahead.
I was gonna say, is your guys' group a big breakfast group?
I think the other stations are. We kind of keep that if we fall on a weekend, we'll do it.
Yeah, my group. It's more weekends. We'll do a big breakfast. I'm not a big breakfast guy, but you work at the other firehouses, and it's like going to a buffet, breakfast place. I've seen the spreads that they put on at some of the other houses there will rival Vegas buffets. What they got
Yeah, and
there.
they got a lot more hands to help out too. I mean, they also got more work to do because it's a dual house. But they all manage and they manage very well.
Yeah,
You were kind of poking a little bit at them earlier. They do very very well. Their morning routine it's orchestrated. They're efficient. They got a meal starting while trucks are getting checked, while house duties are getting done. It's incredible to watch them do it. They're a very very busy company, or
yeah,
companies rather.
right.
Man, oh, having new guys. There's at my level, so I don't consider senior man. That term gets thrown around a lot. To me, I always looked at that. That's your 10-year and above kind of guy. So I'm under that. A couple other guys out of this house are also under there, but just because of how it landed with the hiring practice, everybody seems a little bit younger than that. So it kind of puts us in an odd position. Kind of like almost like you got to grow up fast and you start to get into a stall. So if you got a bunch of 5-year guys, 6-year guys working together, you get in a good groove, right? Got a little bit of experience, but that's that danger zone at 3 to 5 period. Like you think you know everything. And I felt it, and I was wrong. I know nothing. And now I'm where I'm at now. I'm still wrong. I don't know anything. But what I have figured out is you start feeling that slip. I don't need to do that today. I don't need to check this today. The tools will be fine. They can wait another day. It's a positive thing to have new guys rotating in a lot because they keep you on your toes. They're eager to
Yeah,
check the truck. They don't want to get in trouble for not checking the rig or not checking a tool or not cleaning doing some saw maintenance. So I kind of use that as a gauge, as a litmus test for myself. Hey, am I slipping? Am I staying on top? I got to be one step ahead of them. So it keeps me motivated at this point and got to make sure I'm on top of my knowledge. But at the same time, I learned something from them because they got the freshest, update of information coming at them. So it's nice to share that while we're out there cleaning tools. Like you said, a little bit more informal. Back of the truck bay, ask them how they're, what happened over the weekend with them, getting to know them a little bit. But at the same time, you're talking shop, you're both out there working. And I hope to be at some point that 15-year guy still out there polishing tools, cleaning tools, checking rigs, and hopefully setting a good example. And sometimes I fail that even for myself when I overanalyze it and say, I'm slipping. I got to get out there and do it. And I write stuff down just like you said you did. I got that legal pad. I pull that thing out, jot my notes down for what I personally want to accomplish throughout the day if there's time. And that might be make sure those Helligans, all that rust is busted off of them, And once you start grinding, that new guy, he's out there, he doesn't want to be out probied by somebody else, especially somebody with just a few more, just 1 or 2 more years than them. They want to get out there and do it too. So now you got everybody out in the truck bay. So for me, I like having them. And then next thing you know, the senior guy, the guy that's got 18, 20 years on, he's like, oh God, what are they doing out there? And he comes out, hey, why didn't you guys invite me? Now he's out there. That's
yeah,
awesome. I like having them around. Keeps me on keeps me on my toes, and it pulls everybody together. It's nice to have a good balance of a little bit of everything.
yeah. I agree with that.
So that's our morning routine, and that's what we just hashed out. That's how we do it at our career houses. Other departments might have something a little bit different, and we want to hear those. We want to hear those reactions. Hey, we do this completely different. We maybe you save the truck check for the end of the shift because we've used it all up and we want to double check and leave it nice for the next shift. Maybe that's a thing. I don't know. But then the other side of this is what kind of advice do you have for volunteers out there as far as rig checks? We don't have a lot of people. We don't have a lot of people together at the same time throughout the week, throughout the month. What would be your advice for setting up their equipment, ready to rock because a lot of us responded from home? And how do we handle the equipment that's on the rig?
So back when I was a volunteer, you were assigned a rig to do each month. So you rotated through the rigs. So January you might have the engine, February you might have the rescue, March you would have the truck, and so on and so forth. The one thing that kind of always struck me as odd was, you got into the department as a brand new fireman, and they told you, all right, this is the rig checks, this is where the rig check sheets are, this is where how they're assigned. Go ahead, and you're fireman nobody. I just signed up as a volunteer, and you're like, all right, and you start opening up departments, and you don't even know what the hell you're looking at. One thing, I think, and I hope it's being done in other volunteer departments, and you could speak on this better, is that if a new fireman's going up and doing rig checks, I hope that there is a more senior fireman or a junior fireman there that knows what they're looking at, that's walking them through the rig check, almost like a mentorship thing, saying, all right, we're gonna crawl, walk, run with these rig checks. This is how it should be set up. This is what this tool is. This is how you check this tool. The other thing is, I think the rig check should, in the volunteer side, I understand there's probably some sort of sequence for driver training.
Mm-hmm.
So how many years do you have to have in your volley department to start driving?
So you got to be for my department, you have to be a cleared firefighter. So whether that's exterior or interior, and that probationary time is roughly 2 years. It's up to 2 years. It can happen before that,
So
but you have to get off probation first.
how many rigs are at your firehouse?
So just at our station, engine, rescue, truck, 2 ambulances.
Are the guys assigned to the rigs, or you can get on whatever the call's for?
You get on whatever call it is. It's SOG driven. So the type of call that comes in, you get on everybody gets on that rig. You do need to have certain number of interior, certain number of, obviously one driver, qualified driver. Your driver training, you got to get cleared on the ambulances, then rescue engine, then truck, or, there's a combination in there, but it goes ambulances, then at least rescue, and then the other rigs.
So one thing I picked up on, and I was on a deployment during Hurricane Sandy, and we were at this firehouse, and they had 2 engines, a truck, and an ambulance. And the volunteers that were members of this fire department, it wasn't like you could if there was a fire call and it called for an engine and you responded to the firehouse, you could get on that engine and go, but you were actually assigned to the company. So if you were member of, let's just call this the coffee cup fire department, and they had engine 1, engine 2, truck 1, and ambulance B. When you got in, you were assigned as a brand new fireman to the engine company, and you had to have so many years before you could be on the truck company. And that was in a volunteer department. And the people that were assigned to those rigs had to took ownership of those rigs. And what was explained to me is, if you were a new fireman, a recruit fireman, the only rig you could ride on was the engine. Guys in the truck company, if a daytime response, didn't have that much manpower, because the home response model of where we live is guys in the truck company could go down to the engine, but just because the engine always wins, they want the engine out first. But unless you were a member of so many years, you could not get on that truck company and take that out if the truck was called for a mutual aid response. And it's just something that they did to make sure guys had ownership of that rig, and they were checking the rig properly. And, so that it was a natural progression, just like you'd like to see in the fire service. Guys that come out of the fire academy probably shouldn't be assigned to the OV position in a truck company. We put our probationary firemen in the hook and cam position because they're tied to the officer. So I don't think that's going to work in a lot of the places in the volunteer world, but I think it could. It just would take some time. The department out west of us, I think, one firehouse has an engine and a rescue company, and the other 2 firehouses have an engine and a truck company now. I think that's what they're down to, and maybe some pickup trucks. And is the do they assign their lieutenants to each rig, or they just assign Lieutenant 1, Lieutenant 2? I can't
At
remember.
the department I'm at, each officer, so each lieutenant is assigned to a rig. Now, obviously, you can get on it. Like if it's a call for like I'm assigned to a truck. There's nobody else
Yeah,
assigned to it. It's just manpower. So if the job that comes in calls for an engine and I show up, I jump on that engine.
right. But
Highest ranking
you're
officer
responsible.
jumps in the shotgun seat, but
But
I'm
there's a
responsible for the truck check of the truck.
right, and I think that's a good bridge to do. Where if you have somebody that's newer that's doing that truck check, you have that brand new fireman coming in that's doing the rig check, and they check up, they do what they think they're doing is a good truck check. At least they have someone assigned to that rig that knows everything about that rig, or is more than everybody else, and then they can review that truck check and be like, then they can at least look at it and be like, all right, this kid was trying his best, and now let me give him a phone call. Hey, bro, can you meet me up here at 7 o'clock at night on Wednesday or whenever night you're free, and you and I will go through this truck check together. So next time when you do it, you know exactly what you're looking at. This is how the rig should be checked. This is how the tools should be looked, how they should look, how they should work. Turn this fan on, run it for this minute amount of time to make sure that the fan battery is good. The generator, run the generator, put a load on it, make sure the magnets are aligned. When you run a generator, if you have a portable generator, it should be ran with a load on it, not just started. When you're looking at the saws, you know, make sure the saws aren't cracked, tap it with a screwdriver, the little nuances that everybody, working with a rig for a while, as a lieutenant of the truck company out in your volley department, you probably know all this and you probably think, oh, everybody knows that. But you have a brand new fireman that comes in,
You
they
have to
got that piece of
translate it.
paper. And, yeah, exactly. They got the deer in the headlights looking. They're like, what? I don't know what this is, but yeah, I think I remember as a new volunteer fireman, the worst truck check to get was the rescue out of the headquarters because it had so many pieces of equipment on it. And I remember being a new fireman, I didn't know what I was looking at. So instead of asking for help, because I didn't want to be that person that had to ask for help, I counted up the line. All right, I need. There's this many pieces of equipment in this compartment, so I'm taking all the pieces of equipment out of the compartment. I'm like, all right, it says there's 44 pieces of equipment in this compartment. Now I would count. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, 44. It's all got to be there.
Yeah.
Throw it all back in as best as I could. And yeah, it's good. It's all there. Um, I think we got to do a better job of telling. I think we do. I think we do a good job, but I think we could do a better job of telling our new firemen, "Hey, bro, if you don't know what you're looking at, ask for help. Give a phone call." And I think that's on the company officers, the senior firemen at the volunteer houses, to make sure that, hey, I got a recruit fireman coming up here doing a truck check. Make sure if you have any questions, give me a call, or even better yet, I'll come up there and do the truck check with you to make sure everything's the way it should be.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's time. So not only do I deal with the truck, I also gotta work in time for the new people coming, the onboarding process, and see them through their probationary period. So I have two tracks I've been focusing on. One is that ladder truck, making it a truck company. Out there, we don't call the station, we call the group that's at that station is the company. So they don't call it departments, they call them companies out there. Whereas the people get on the truck, it just happens to be the truck crew, right? It's not like there's multiple companies under one house. That whole house is the company. It's different to me. I'm learning. But what I did find is, okay, you got a ladder truck, you got to use that as a ladder truck. And the crew that gets on there, that's a truck company. And they're going to operate as a truck company. All right. So we can teach the skills and we're working on that. But the big thing is the equipment and what's on that thing when it rolls. Just because it's got that big old ladder for a spine doesn't mean that everything on there just automatically gives them the okay and grants them authority and they know what they're doing. It starts with the small things. What's on that rig? What do we need to get on that? What's got to come off that rig, right? And how do we know what's on there? We don't have a formal inventory system like we would like similar how we do at work. But what I can do and what I did is I made a spreadsheet. Okay, so I started with just a simple Excel spreadsheet, went through compartment by compartment. I got Halligan's in one compartment. Okay, I got 3 Halligans. Okay, Halligan's times 3, in 2 different cells. And I just literally listed by compartment around this whole thing. And the compartments are driver side, compartment 1, driver side, compartment 2, so on and so forth. Officer side, or I think I call it I forget. I think it's OS. Shotgun side, because it's not always a officer in that front seat. It's kind of like how we used to do it before we had enough officers. It would just be senior guy jumps up front type of thing. So shotgun seat, shotgun side, compartment 1. Listing all that stuff out. And I put that in a folder that everybody can access. Only I can edit it. It's view only. And then I made a QR code, laminated it, stuck it to the driver door. And it's labeled. It says inventory, truck inventory. Next to it, there's another QR code that goes to a truck check. And I used a Google form, made a Google form that essentially mimics everything that's in that Excel spreadsheet. So when they snap a picture of it or open up their camera, go to that thing, you got to put in your name, date, and you go through just like we do at work. Fuel level, odometer, I think I got aerial hours on there because that's something the district wants. And then it goes, okay, compartment 1, is the Halligan there? Yes. And you literally just check all the boxes, right? It's pencil whipping, but you got to check through that stuff. The saws, I got 2 cutter's edges, chains. 2 cutter's edge chainsaws. Are they in there? Yep. Cutter's edge 1, cutter's edge 2. Okay. And then there's even a spot. Did you rotate the batteries? Yep. I rotated the batteries on all the electronic equipment. Goes through everything. So now I'm matching. It's very, very manual, but it gives something that's there all the time. So if I can get that kid, that young guy that just came in, he's fresh, he wants to get eager, he can come up, we could do it together. But if it's on a day that I'm at work or I'm out of town or something, and he wants to do it anyway, hey man, go, it's on the truck, it's on the driver door. Take a screenshot, bam, that's everything. All right, you got questions, jot them in there. And that gets sent to, when they complete it and hit submit, it goes to dumps to a folder and it generates a report, and we just stack that report in a folder by rig, by month. And we're trying to do that for every single rig, just because that is something that we can capture as lieutenants and do on our own and have documentation of say, yes, it's done, or identify that something's missing, something's broken. That's the level we're playing with, and it's gaining some traction. Hopefully someday we can get to a point where we have an official documented thing. But the other side of that is there is you would call like a given to this equation. We don't want paper trail. We're not doing anything illegal. So it's not that we don't want paper trail. It's that we don't want to have a ton of paper we have to file somewhere and store. That's money, time. That's too much. Everybody wants something digital these days. So this meets both ends for now. The other side of that, I said probationary people, new people, essentially made a probationary book that started. The guy that was before me, he was awesome. He had a nice little binder. I think it started with like 7 pages. He made it 9 pages. Now I made it, Christ, I think there's like 38 pages. It's thick. It's not overthought. It's just that half of those are JPR stuff. So after they do firefighter 1, it's BFO and IFO now, but firefighter 1, all that kind of stuff, interior, exterior, then they come back and they can knock off all of those JPRs to prove that we have gone through the skill sets more than once to meet the standard. And some of that is setting up equipment. Some of that includes truck checks. The prior sections of this book are they mimic kind of what we do at work, but again, translating it to the volunteer world, time's a big thing. Can't get it back. Costs a lot of time to do this stuff. It looks scary, but in 2 years, you can knock this stuff out way sooner than 2 years. But it gives them something to work towards. And everything needs a signature sign off from any officer. So for an engine section, go talk to one of the engine lieutenants. Do a truck check with them. They sign off. Pull some hose, whatever. So there's your JPR, and you've satisfied the requirement inside the engine thing. When it's truck, you see me again. But ultimately, then I go back through and verify everything, double check with everything, and then I do the ultimate sign off, hand it to the chief, go, yep, hey, they're ready to rock. They're ready to come off probation. So it kind of gives them something to build towards without needing me in the room all the time.
Is the truck inventory sheet on their probationary checkoffs?
No, but that's a good idea. There's a section in there that requires them. They must do 3 truck checks for the truck. Let's say rig checks. 3 rig checks for the truck, 3 rig checks for the engine, 3 rig checks for the rescue, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so like we have the truck inventories in our Proby books at work. We also had the fluid checks that they're supposed to do 3 times as well. But something, yeah, you're talking about like the QR codes. I think that's a phenomenal idea because they can do it right on their phone. They don't need, they can just pull their phone out, hit the QR code, and go through, with a Google Docs form and hit yes, no, is it there? Something I was just, and probably someone's going to steal this idea, whatever, I don't care. But it'd be cool. And I remember back when we upgraded the rescue to the Pierce that we still have. And when the volunteer battalion chief that was here, because the equipment had to be laid out in a certain way to fit in the compartments, he took pictures of all the compartments and how the equipment was, laminated them, and put them in the compartments so you could see how the equipment was laid out. I wonder if a truck check development software could be where you could take a picture of the compartment and hit a little checkbox, and like the picture of the tool turns green that it's there, or hit an X and the tool turns red that it's not there. And then you could, if you hit X on the tool, it'll come up with a narrative like not there or not working or broken or whatever. It would be something that for a newer fireman that doesn't know what they're looking at, especially with some of these bigger rigs that have a lot of specialized equipment, they're looking now, instead of just looking at a piece of paper that says Halligan. They might not know what a Halligan is. Hopefully they do. But, take a piece of equipment that they might not know what it is. But, all right, there's a picture of this thing. I don't know what this is, but it's there. And they just hit the touch screen on their phone and it populates, all right, that piece of equipment's there. So at least you have a good truck check that the piece of equipment's there. They might not know what it is, but the truck check's getting done. Now we have to bridge the gap to actually teach them what the piece of equipment is. Maybe something for a software fireman to figure out how to do that. I'm sure
that's a really good idea. I do remember those sheets. They were laying in I think at the beginning it was laying in the cabinet. Somebody put them in a binder after a while, so they're all together. Yeah, that's it. That's a good idea. But it does, again, you still have to have that thing, just like we do in our morning checks. It's nice to be able to go through it with them, question and answer. And you might have to do that. It's not hand holding, but you're going with them a few times, so that, like you said, we've seen probationary guys come here, we fresh out of academy, launch in the back, officer hands them the truck check and goes, okay, kid, go to the truck check. Like, I don't know where any of this is, So
last thing we should hit on, and this probably could take a whole nother podcast, whole nother discussion, is you're sitting in the chauffeur seat, especially on our ladder truck, which is a Quint. What do you do to make sure that truck is operational for the day?
In terms of, as the chauffeur?
Yeah.
You're saying? Yep. Oh, man. So, like, at work,
your gear's on the rig. You're responsible for, especially on our rig, you're responsible for the aerial, you're responsible for the pump, you're responsible for that truck being able to roll. What do you do? Because, we talked about your gear's already on the rig. Next thing you do, you got to check your tools that you're responsible for is the rig now, not the tools in the rig.
Right. It's the vehicle.
You're responsible for the vehicle itself. Walk me through, because I haven't been in that seat. I've been an officer since 2014, so I haven't been in that seat in 10 years. As an officer, I try to pride myself in knowing the rig as well as the chauffeurs. I want my chauffeurs to have more knowledge than me, but I also try to, the problem with being an officer is if there's a problem with a rig, they always turn to you. It's like, bro, I don't drive this thing every day. You're the one that drives. The alarm better than I do. Yeah, right. But like the emergency overrides on the aerial, or if there's a troubleshoot on the pump, I should be the one. If I don't know it, then it goes to the mechanic. So I'm the one that has to troubleshoot it first before the guy riding that chauffeur seat. But I really like my chauffeurs to have, if not the same amount of knowledge as me, I hope they have more knowledge of me of that rig. So walk me through what you're doing. You're assigned to drive that day. You're assigned to chauffeur that rig. What are you doing when you're going through your rig check when you get in? Yeah, I
So the
think
first
that would be a good stop after we.
Okay. So the first thing I do is I pull it outside. I don't I'm not a fan of firing it up, trying to run things inside. First of all, we're on a truck. How am I going to check that aerial inside the truck bay? I might be able to run the pump. I'm still diesel, all that crap. Okay, I'm not going to get into the EPA and where that exhaust is going, and are we going to blow the vent off the side of this thing? Just take it outside. So I pull it out on the pad, put it in park. First thing I do is check the lights. Flick the lights on, all the lights. Hit the generator so that I can power up all the external lights that require the generator. Turn everything on, and I literally walk around, check every single one. We always have a marker light out, it seems like, and it's never the same one twice. And then mark that down, let the boss know, hey, we got to generate a work order. At work, we can generate the work orders as a fireman, as a firefighter. So we can do that and just let them know, hey, boss, I wrote a work order. This thing's been out. But you check the work orders to make sure that somebody else didn't do it. And that's something you pass down to the next group. So lights, siren, if it's not too early. Again, if it's that guy who lives nearby, right across the street, if it's 7 a.m. on Sunday, I'm not going to fire up that siren. I'll wait till later. Then I go to the aerial. Outriggers all the way out. I'm a fan of using short jacks sometimes just because of the nature. Some of our roads are super tight, so I know how to short jack that thing. So sometimes I'll test them all the way out, like it's fully deployed. Sometimes I'll test it just a short jack, and then I raise up that aerial and go to work. It starts off by lifting it straight up in the air as far as it'll extend, or as far as it'll raise, extend it out as far as it can, retract it as far as it can, rotate it both ways, and then I go around and check the sensors. By checking the sensors, I mean, is it going to collide with the body? If it gets to that dead man zone where it's off 45 degrees, because we have H-style jacks off the rear. We don't have dual H's, so it kind of like giant plus sign, or it's kind of like driving a three-wheeler, the old three-wheel ATVs. It'll tip in certain directions if it overextends too low, right? Center of mass kind of shifts. So it'll automatically recognize that at 0 degree inclination, if you extend the ladder out at 45 degrees rotation, it won't let you extend all the way out because it goes, hey, our weight based off of these sensors and everything is saying it's too much, it'll tip. I want it to alarm out. If it doesn't alarm out, I know I got a sensor issue. So now I'm checking electronic components as well as the function of the mechanical portions of it. So the hydraulics and everything else that's running inside of it. Check that off both sides, 45, 45. If I pull it around back or pull it far out into the front apron where I got more space, I'll check it off the back of the rig as well. So now I can really get down to that -10. Ours will go -10 degrees declination, so below grade. Raise it up, it'll go all the way up to 80. So I'm checking full extension of each one of the pistons. As I'm extending and rotating, I'm looking at the gears below the turntable if I can see them peek down under there. I'm looking at the wheels for the pulleys system, everything I can visually see. And each time I kind of learn something new about it, even after a few years. I'm just checking to make sure that thing works. And electronics don't mean that this thing can't work. So if I see an electronic thing lighting up or a sensor goes off, I can override it so long as I understand mechanics and I'm in a safe working conditions. And it just happens to be, I can recognize that it's a sensor acting up funny. I just need to know that for the day. If it's something super serious, I need to let the boss know we might have to take this out of service. Sometimes it's easy as wiping one of these sensors clean because, road grime. All right. But I need to know that those things are working or how to not override improperly, but inside of a good safety margin. So that when we do get that job in 10 more minutes, I can still function without putting anybody in danger. And we all know about it. That's a big thing. If we don't check that aerial, we never check it, it's just going to sit up there. Our apparatus get destroyed in two ways. Either overuse, which we've seen that, or we never use. It needs to be worked. Everything's got to be worked, especially hydraulic seals. All right. Everything else that's got grease on it, those things need to be worked too. But those hydraulics need to be exercised. Just like our HydroRam. Got to work that all the time. Those seals will dry up from lack of use. It's not that we destroyed it. Yeah, under load. And it's not that we destroyed beat the snot out of this thing. It's that we didn't use it. We haven't even checked it. Have we worked that piston? So that's the aerial. Once I get the aerial all working condition and everything, bed that thing, put the jacks back in. Then we have a quint. So I fire up the pump. And this is an important thing. I know. pump on a truck, don't use it, whatever. Still got to know that it works. Put it in pump gear. For us, we have a puck, so we can pump and roll. So I don't have to do brake, neutral, flip the switch, and all that stuff. It's already, as long as the brake's on, it's in neutral. I can just hit a button, boom. Now pump's engaged. Go out to the pump, tank the pump. All right, we got technically 470 gallons because we got a 30-gallon foam cell. Tank the pump, and then I half crack the tank fill. All right, because I have nothing connected or no other valve open on that pump needs to be moving water. And by half cracking that tank to fill, I'm putting just a little bit of back pressure. I'm making that pump do a little bit of work. The closer it is to fully closed, the more that pump has back pressure and is working. If I completely close that off, I have just tank to pump and no tank fill. I'm getting a little bit of water in there. It's just kind of moving around. That water will overheat. It could cavitate, but you're just overheating the same gallon or 5 gallons, whatever. I honestly don't know how many gallons are inside of a pump. It's probably a lot more than that, but I'm just overheating it. So I need somewhere to move that water through to cycle it. And without having to pull a line and charge it so that I get that back pressure as if that pump is actually get under load by just partially cracking that tank fill, it's no different than open up a hand line. Now I can go over, put it in pressure or RPM mode, dial it up. I like to get it up to our pressure mode, get it up to 120, 125. And then once it's there and set, by cracking that tank fill open more and back down, I'm slowly opening and closing that. You'll hear the engine wind up to, an RPM to try and keep up with the pressure, right? I set it to 125 or 120. As I open that up wider, bigger diameter essentially. So now it's easier to push water through there. That pump's like, hey, I need to push more pressure. I'm trying to get up to 120. So it's going to rev up higher, right? Kind of, to me, I would assume that's basic principles of mechanics, but maybe it's not. I think just from doing it every shift, it becomes easier and easier. That's how I work that pump. Okay, that's how I test to make sure the pump can engage and that it's doing its job and it's regulating itself. Then I shut it all down, go back down to idle. All right. But that only told me one thing, that this thing's getting water into the pump, okay, because it didn't overheat, and I have somewhere to go, and it can work under load. After if I throw that thing wide open, it'll RPM out, scream so high that it'll alarm and go, hey, whoa, something's going on, and it'll slow back down, go back to idle. It's just so that it doesn't burn itself out. So I check for that too. Hey, it's recognizing something's wrong. It goes back down to idle or lowers its own RPM, and it lets you know, because we do have a electronic gauge. Once I get all that done, I'll shut down the truck altogether. All right, take it out of pump gear, shut it all the way down. Then I drain the pump and work all the levers. So every valve. And you don't want to do that while there's water in there, because you might accidentally partially load up, pre-connect, whatever. But I work every valve. And that includes the electronic. We have 2 electronic valves, and that kind of sucks. You got to put the ignition on, like accessory mode on your vehicle, just to get those things to open and close. Because there is a mechanical device still opening and closing. It's just driven by an electronic component. So you got to work those valves. And then go around and make sure everything's drained. Once it's all drained, I like to do a dry prime. I was showing one of the new guys the other day the difference in dry prime and wet prime. And it's just to check to make sure that this thing can hold a prime. Shut off every single valve. That's shut your tank to pump, shut your tank to valve, tank fill, close all your drains, then run your prime. We have an air prime, so still requires accessory on or ignition on without turning the truck over. You run it till you get a vacuum, and then just release and make sure that needle doesn't let, air's not escaping. If it's escaping quickly, it means you got a valve open. If it's a slow leak, you might just have a bad seal somewhere. Now you got to chase through and figure that out. Let it go, make sure it can hold a vacuum, then open up the valve and let it escape. Pull it back in the truck bay, fill her back up. We have that pony length that comes off house water, so we can fill the truck back up inside the truck bay. Put water back in the pump, get that thing topped off. I don't think I skipped anything. That's about it as far as the rig itself.
Yeah, I think the only thing, when you check the lights, just something I always check directionals. And I don't know where that started from. Probably one of the senior guys used to do it, but I always used to check the directionals. And Then I got lazy and I would just turn the hazard lights on and see if the hazard lights blinked. Then I mean I know both directionals worked.
See,
But
I don't check them for a reason. I got a lot more steel, bigger bumper. Get out of my way. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's a good point. I should probably check the directionals. I know it's in our once a week we have our fluid checks, and that's part of it.
yeah,
Is checking those kind of bulbs.
yeah, that was it. That was another thing I was going to hit on. Like, so with us, we had to do our full fluid checks on the rig once a week. And that coincides with our EMS bag checks. Even though our EMS bag check usually gets checked every shift, we do a formal truck, I shouldn't say a truck check, but a
Documented.
formal documented inventory Department of Health check to make sure we have the 25 band-aids, the, this many 4x4s type of thing that we need to carry according to the Department of Health. Um, but yeah, those are done every Tuesday. And then small engines are done the first of the month, the first Tuesday of the month. Even though the small engines are done every shift, they're formally documented the first Tuesday of the month that they've been ran, the oil's checked, the gas is topped off, and things like that. One thing, and I hit on it briefly in the conversation about checking saws. I want to make sure to get this in before we close out for tonight. Is on rotary saws. One of the biggest things I tell my guys to check, and I think our company does a good job of doing it, is checking the blade integrity. And it's real easy to do. Is you just take your screwdriver or your scrunch and you just tap on the blade. And if the blade rings, the blade's good. If the blade doesn't ring, that means the vibration in the blade is being stopped somewhere by a crack. That means that blade's got to get taken out of service. A catastrophic failure can be on those aluminum oxide blades, those metal cutting blades. Those will grenade and severely injure somebody if those are cracked. So those blades got to be checked regularly. Your regular 12-12 chopper blade, you'll know if the blade rings or not. So just tap on it with a screwdriver. Blade rings, it's good to go. The other thing is with our chainsaws, we carry two different chainsaws. We carry a vegetation saw and we carry a ventilation saw. When you're looking at your carbide tips on either the rotary blade or your chainsaw, with us, it's 3 carbides in a row. The blade goes out of service or the chain goes out of service, or 5 total carbides, then the blade's out of service or the chain's out of service. So 3 in a row or 5 total, we're taking that out of service. Now our chains, they're $300 chains. They can get rebrazed, so we can send those out for, I think it's like $9 a carbide tip. They'll rebraze them for us. So don't throw your chains out if it's the certain brand that can get rebrazed, because it's a lot cheaper just to rebraze them than buy a new $300 chain. The 12-12 chopper blades, like we talked about earlier, those are throwaways. 3 carbide tips in a row, 5 total, toss a blade out. Or if you want a good training blade, especially if you're cutting OSB, use those 12-12 chopper blades without carbide tips with OSB. You'll learn how to sink that blade in there and work it without the carbide tips on there. But that, I just want to make sure we hit on that, because I think that's a safety factor for the fireman to really check and hit on. And two, it's good to know that if nobody know, if you know it, good. If you don't, hopefully you just learned something. So
yeah, just
time to wrap up.
This whole thing, just to recap, set yourself up for success. We tell the recruits this in the academy. It's how you position your gear, where you position it, and when. Come in a little bit early. There's nothing wrong. Nobody's ever going to penalize you for coming in early. If you're 4 hours early, that might be ridiculous. Go home. Go back to bed. But if it's, that hour, half hour, and this is if you're at a career department or you guys do standby at some point, get your gear set up in the position. That should be the first thing you do. Right before that, maybe start the coffee, but nothing else is more important than getting your gear ready. So as soon as that call comes in, you're not diving for gear, leaving gloves behind, you forget your helmet in your locker. I've done it. I'm guilty of it. Don't do that. Get yourself set up. Then check your SCBA, go through your process. And the more you go through, the more you have tools in your hand, the easier life is going to be. You're just preparing yourself for the feel, where your gear is, how everything. It really is. That's where it all starts. That's where the magic happens. For the volunteers, that means setting up your stuff in your locker the way you need it to be. And once you do it once, and maybe it takes a couple weeks to dial it in, but once you get set, don't try not to change it. Unless it's something you absolutely need to change, try not to change it. All right, so that way you get that feel down. You know when something's missing. You recognize there's a problem. Somebody might have borrowed your gear because theirs was in the wash and they snagged yours while you were at your A job, whatever. Keep your gear set up the way you need it. So when you race in there, you can jump right in, go to work. Truck checks, that's the next thing. And maybe it's once a week, maybe it's once a month, maybe it's every shift. Get through them, do them efficiently. It's worth having tools at the ready. Nobody wants to end up on TV 10 News trying to crank that saw over because we forgot to start it up, and maybe it's been a week or two. We never check it. We didn't check the oil. That thing sat and sat and sat. It's rusted over. Who knows? Keep your tools in good working order and know where it is.
Yeah, setting up for success is the biggest thing you do. Building, creating good habits, and people are creatures of habit. So if you can build that good habit off the beginning of your career and setting yourself up for success, you're just going to have a. I'm not saying you're going to be the all-star, but you're not going to be the one that's keeping people behind, and they're not going to look at. They're not. You never want to hear, "Oh, he's a good guy." You don't want to be that. You want to be, he's a good fireman. Yeah. Or he's a good firefighter. You don't want to be the good guy. So don't be the good guy. Set yourself up for success. Start your day off right. Make sure the coffee's on.
Make sure the coffee's on. All right. Be safe.